but it is one point. And it's about sort of what's getting attention ahead of this hearing tomorrow. I think there is one thing that it's getting way too much attention ahead of tomorrow's hearing. It's sort of prurient interest, but I really don't think it's substantively that important. So if you're looking to kind of like save brain space, like what should I focus on and what can I ignore? I think there's something that's gotten a ton of noise in the past day or two that actually deserves very little attention, and you can wipe that part of your hard drive. There's also something, though, that isn't getting nearly enough attention ahead of tomorrow's hearing, just in terms of what we should be prepped for, what we should be looking out for, what might end up being important here. We're going to treat that one in more detail tonight. The less important thing, the perhaps not at all important thing, is named Steve Bannon. I know that Mr. Bannon has been all over the news for the past day or two. Lots of headlines, lots of pixels, many newsy-ish seeming developments about Mr. Bannon. So many, in fact, that you might think he matters right now to the January 6th investigation and indeed to what's going to happen tomorrow. I honestly think that in this case, you just shouldn't let the noise about him distract you. What's going on with him, why he's getting all this press, is actually very simple. It's not that complicated. It doesn't take that long to explain. Steve Bannon got a subpoena to testify to the January 6th investigation. A subpoena is a legally binding thing. It's not an invitation. It's a legal summons. You can't ignore it. He ignored it. He denounced it. He put on a little red-faced show and yelled about it to TV cameras. And I'm sure he enjoyed that, but it's not that's not a legal response. A subpoena is a binding thing. You have to respond to it. He claimed the reason that he was defying the subpoena was executive privilege, that President Trump had a right to his counsel as a government employee, and he couldn't violate the private sanctity of his advice as an official advisor to the president. Legally speaking, that is a pile of corn nuts. I mean, first of all, if you want to assert that you can't answer questions because of some assertion of executive privilege, A, the president, or maybe the former president, has to assert that executive privilege. It's not clear that that ever happened here. Also, what you're supposed to do is respond to the subpoena, honor the subpoena, sit down, hear the questions they're going to ask you, and then on a question-by-question basis, you assert any relevant privilege you think may apply. You can't just say, I cannot be asked anything. Ever. Also, the time period in question here they wanted to ask him about is 2020 and 2021. In 2020 and 2021, Steve Bannon was a podcaster, not a presidential advisor. He was a podcaster, and nothing against podcasters, some of my best friends, right? But dude did not work in the White House or for the government in any capacity, and had not for years by the time he did the stuff that the investigators wanted to ask him about. It would be like Bill Clinton getting on board your JetBlue flight to Denver today and saying, hey everybody, hey, y'all need to get out of here. Because I am on this plane, it's now Air Force One, and so you're all not cleared to be here, you have to go. That's not how it works, right? You'd be like, hey, that's Bill Clinton on my JetBlue flight. Nice to meet you, former President Bill Clinton, but also sit down. This is JetBlue, and we're not leaving. This isn't Air Force One. Just because you're on it, that part of your life is over. That is not how this works. It's not how this works. Either for former presidents or for former presidential advisors who now have sad podcasts sponsored by the MyPillow guy. There's no executive privilege that attends to anything Steve Bannon did as a podcaster. It just doesn't even, I mean, in the law book, this wouldn't even be something that you wouldn't be able to look up in the index. This is irrelevant. This is like somebody asked me if you want Coke or Pepsi, and you say, I'd love a fruit roll-up. Like, it's just completely irrelevant. Steve Bannon defied a legal subpoena in a way that was not legal. It was not even a close approximation of legal. And so, the U.S. Justice Department is prosecuting him for doing that. The reason he's been getting all this press this past couple of days is because his criminal trial is about to start for that. He is facing up to 2 years in prison. As a last-ditch effort to try to screw up that case against him, he came up with this new gambit in which he says, President Trump has now released him from the bonds of executive privilege, so he now would like to testify, please. Yeah, right before his trial is supposed to start in federal court. And he's doing this because he's trying to derail his trial. And the reason we know that none of this matters is because today, the federal judge hearing Steve Bannon's case laughed it all out of the courtroom. The Bannon criminal trial is not derailed. Bannon has not even succeeded in using this tactic to delay the trial past its scheduled start date, which remains 1 week from today. And oh, by the way, prosecutors disclosed to the court today that the FBI went and interviewed Trump's lawyer about all this, and Trump's lawyer clarified to them, yeah, Trump never even tried to assert any executive privilege when it comes to Steve Bannon, ergo the whole thing was made up. So, there is no drama around the January 6th investigation and Steve Bannon, other than the fact that Steve Bannon may now go to prison for contempt for defying their legal subpoena to him. And he can't get out of it by belatedly coming up with this publicity stunt where he agrees to testify to the committee. Yes, maybe he will eventually come in and testify to the committee. Who knows? But if he does testify, it will reportedly be behind closed doors, just like all the other kids, big guy. I mean, the press, for whatever reason, may enjoy covering Mr. Bannon's every stunt, but he doesn't matter in the larger scheme of this. Nothing he is saying or doing means anything in substance. And also, he should maybe be focused on, other stuff. Pack a toothbrush, big guy. While the Steve Bannon red-faced, breath-holding tantrum over these past couple of days has gotten way more attention than it substantively deserves, I think the thing that does deserve more attention ahead of tomorrow's hearing is the grenades. The military ordnance grenades and explosives and the many, many, many guns that we are only just now learning about, mostly from Justice Department filings, but also from brand new open source reporting. That stuff actually is important.